Hi there! This is my review of the very first episode of the second Game of Thrones spin-off, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. An episode aptly named The Hedge Knight, after the novella this season is adapting. To start with, I really like this, and I'd rate it a 10 out of 10 overall. That there's nothing I have a driving need to change, or that I would argue needs to be done significantly different. Nothing worth that effort, that I could just sit down and enjoy it. And I intend for my reviews of the rest of the season to be relatively short and come out by the following Monday. This is coming out the next weekend in time for episode 2, because as the first episode, it took me longer to process, that I wanted to get more of a sense of what the general audience reaction was. So I've been looking at other reviewers, I've been looking at general YouTube reaction channels, well, what did they think of this? Also, I dove into doing the episode write-up for this on Game of Thrones Wiki, because you really need to get the ball rolling on that for the premiere of a new show. And it hadn't been, so we need every volunteer we can get on the wiki. I'm only one slob plugging away at it. So I was trying to update what we could there just to get the ball rolling. I was looking at other reviews. Also, this episode is a little longer than the rest of the season is going to be. Had a wait-and-see attitude. But the way I've been approaching episode reviews since House of the Dragon started, that's when I started making episode reviews. I wasn't around for the full run of Game of Thrones. Since then, the way I decided to handle episode reviews is to keep them focused on a 7-point checklist, because 7 is a good number. And 7 most notable points from it. These can be either good or bad, or neutral, just lore things that they referenced. It's the 7 things that stood out the most to me, and I try to structure it around that. This episode's 7 points include the casting, the comedic tone, the music, and changes and inventions like things to the Dornish puppet show, the new scenes with new characters, the prostitute characters, and the big new invented sequence with Lyonel Baratheon. First, some opening remarks, though, on the show in general, that I dashed off 4 audio-only podcasts in the lead-up to the premiere as a pregame show, 15 to 20 minutes each, it's about an hour of content, on things the showrunner had said when the trailers dropped in interviews about the overall approach to the show, general points that apply to everything. If you haven't seen them, you might want to go back and check those out in full. I don't want to spend a lot of time repeating everything about them here. The short version, if you're new to this, is that first, the show is the perfect duration, that 6 episodes, an average of half an hour each. I mean, the first one was 45, but the rest will be half an hour. That entirely makes sense, that it's based on a short novella. Some reviewers got advanced screeners of the entire season. I didn't, but I believe them. The reliable people have said, this doesn't feel rushed at all. Nothing was cut for time. If they cut it, was for pacing or adaptation, page-to-screen reasons. In fact, they had time left over to add things. So it is the perfect runtime. It's simply a shorter story that they're adapting. George R.R. Martin even wanted to do it as a movie. I'm guessing TV movie. And I try to keep in mind what some of those reviewers that got the advanced screeners said, that this would have worked better in a binge drop. And, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Whether it was a movie or a binge-dropped 6-episode season, not every episode will have a hook cliffhanger going into the next one, that the first episode doesn't end on a cliffhanger. Others will, but they said, thinking on it, this might hurt the show at first as it's coming out through when it ends in February, but forever after that, starting in March, any new viewers finding the show will just watch all 6 back-to-back, and it'll actually be stronger that way as more people find it. They'll be able to binge watch it, the pacing will be better. So it's what a lot of people have been saying, that this is going to be a slow burn. And apparently the premiere did reasonably well, but expect it to only improve as it goes along. Unlike House of the Dragon, which had this huge season 1 premiere that was meant to hook everyone in or they're going to turn off. There's a general attitude that this will build over time, that binging all 6 once they're out is actually a better way to watch it and will hook more people. Here's hoping. And the second of my 4 videos was talking about how they stressed Dunk is the only POV in the entire show. This is a directive coming from Martin himself that he didn't even want Egg to have his own POV scenes. But now that we've actually seen it in action in a finished episode, you do get more of a sense of it. And it does make complete sense, as it's a strict adaptation of a novella in which Dunk was the only POV, so check that out. And the other 2 videos were things about like how they'll approach the cutaway gags, that you've seen that now. And the last one's particularly important on things the showrunners said about their approach to the different cinematography in this. The House of the Dragon tried to be immersive. They do too, but they just took it to the next degree, that colors are a lot more saturated, but not so much it's cartoonish, that things are more specifically from Dunk's perspective because he's the only POV. So I did a full hour of podcast on all 4 of those things. Please check those out if you want in detail. I'm not going to revisit those general points in this review of the first episode. I already covered that in the pre-game videos. Yes, because I'm backlogged. So, chapter break now. That was my, let's call it the cold open prologue, like how every season has a cold open prologue, to meeting this new series. Talking about I had this hour's worth of pre-game videos about the general style. I promise I won't spend time doing that in my next reviews, but strictly keep to the 7-point format to try to keep these videos shorter and easier to watch. That I have 3 full pages of notes I'm reading off here in my script. All of this preamble took up the first page. From this point onward for Dunk and Egg, I'm trying to limit it to no more than 2 full pages. This is special because this is the premiere. And as part of trying to limit myself, I'd even try to limit myself to 1 page if possible, but realistically 2, to keep the runtimes of the main review videos to a minimum. Some of these points, when they're able to merit or sustain their own short, standalone topical video, I will split those off from the main review. To just give you a heads up in advance that things like Lyonel Baratheon merits having his own video, so I'll just mention that as, and by the way, point 6 is Lyonel Baratheon had additions. I'm devoting a full video to that. Because I realize there's a lot of episode reviews on YouTube now, many of them a full hour long, and if I also made an hour-long one, which is a big time investment for people to listen to, it would get lost in the shuffle. That shorter reviews are more likely to get noticed, and even then, some of these are just, oh, it's a review of, I like that, that was cool, versus I'm going through episode notes, cast and crew interviews and things. So it makes more sense that if it's a topical point that is eye-catching, like Lyonel Baratheon or the Dornish puppet show or something, I'm going to devote specific episodes to that, and I'll say that. I don't consider this cheating, just, hey guys, this is the heads-up general introduction. The review is an introduction to a set of videos I will make in the coming week about what we saw in it. Okay, so that's basically what I'm aiming for. All of that introduction to how we're going to be handling this new series is now done. Here is my 7-point checklist about the episode. Point 1. The cast is amazing. I can't say this enough. They literally are the characters walking off the page. That's how Martin put it. I agree with it. And not just the scripted dialogue. That's one thing. Most of it is lifted directly from the novella anyway. And not just the casting based on the actors' physical appearances. That I'm not here to praise how well the casting director matched the headshot of one actor to the concept from art from a book. Nor that, oh wow, look, Peter Claffey can strike a pose as Dunk making a brooding face. My god, these performances, these faces. That's a Game of Thrones thing. No, that isn't acting. Guys, for almost 2 years now, we've had still promo images of Peter Claffey in costume as Dunk, staring out, focusing on something. You don't just look at that and go, my God, he's Dunk. That now we're actually seeing his acting performance, even though it's dialogue lifted straight from the novella. Now, we are seeing him perform as Dunk. We are seeing Dexter Sol Ansell perform as Egg. That their choices for line delivery and just body language, because actors act with their whole body, not just their face, and just seeing it, I astonished that, dear God, Claffey utterly embodies Dunk. He is Dunk. Though I will be upset if he doesn't get an Emmy nomination for this role. I really will. That little things with his body language to reflect that Dunk is deeply lacking in confidence, but trying and failing to puff himself up and act more confident, and then failing and stammering over certain lines of dialogue. Do you have any idea how hard it is to play a character who is himself trying but failing to act convincingly, to act confidently? What TV Tropes calls bad acting? I saw him live in person at the New York Comic Con launch panel. I loved how he explained it, that Dunk isn't Henry Cavill as the Witcher, confidently sauntering down the town's main street. He is a not confident guy desperately trying to act like Henry Cavill's Witcher and failing. And you see that his false, I am a knight, you know, I will have no need of coin, and then you see how he's bad at it. That is hard to do. Someone failing to try to act confidently, and he just embodies it in everything, or how he's cringing all the time, as they point out when he's with Baratheon, that you keep cringing all the time because you have no confidence, and just, it was perfect. The rest of the cast was great too, though, we haven't seen most of them yet, like all the Targaryen characters that come in the second episode. As for Dexter as Egg, he hasn't had that much screen time yet, but in what he had, it is hard to find a good child actor, and he does manage to come off as precociously intelligent and snarky. And from interviews and stuff, the thought he put into the role, so wow, they just walked off the page. And this was impossible with House of the Dragon because so much of it is an outline, versus like they are giving the exact same dialogue, but in their body language, performance, and the way that they play the lines. Even comparing it to the original Game of Thrones, not every character was exactly like, as Martin pointed out, like Ned Stark, Varys. This is them. This is exactly what the book did. And that doesn't even mean that's always a great thing. I mean, they said Emilia Clarke physically doesn't look like Daenerys in the book. She's much more sharp-featured. But wow, this is as if I am watching, because there's been a graphic novel adaptation, which they said both actors had read. This is like the graphic novel just walked out into three-dimensional space. Claffey is Dunk, that the characters walked off the page. And I won't be in awe, expressing my awe of that in every subsequent episode, but trust me, it's there, that this is just wow, on a level even Game of Thrones couldn't do. 0.2 out of 7. I actually felt they got the lighter tone of this story perfectly balanced. That there are comedic moments for, pacing and to break it up, and yeah, there's a poop joke here and there, but there's comedic moments, but also sincerity. That what we saw of it in the trailers had me thinking already that looks like they got the balance right, and now that we've seen the full episode, they did it very well. And I don't want to waste more time talking about this, it's the elephant in the room, that the theme song fake out to a Gilligan cut of him pooping at the start of the episode, and then the credits roll, the title card, that didn't add anything for me, but it didn't detract from it either. Which is what I've seen a couple of other reviewers saying, like Fantasy Haven and Quinn the GM, that I'm not hating on it, I didn't love it, but I understood what they were trying to do. That in the behind-the-scenes video, I got it when they pointed out, they apologized and said, we're trying to emphasize this isn't a highborn who has all these things, that Dunk is not a well-funded knight. He is totally out of his league. He's got a belt made of rope, and he shits in hedges. So I get that. It was a way to show, no, this is a guy totally out of his depth who thinks I'm going to be going to glory at eternity and then realizes I have no chance here. So I got that. I'm not angry about it. It's just, it was what it was. It helped set up very quickly the tone of this and the scale of this. Let's leave this moment in the past where it belongs instead of commenting on it further. Just, okay, they did that. Side note, by the way, about the comedic tone, and particularly the cutaway gags, is that the cutaway gags touch on that this show actually uses flashbacks, that they're not afraid of those like Benioff and Weiss were, and that they would prominently signal this even before the title card, that with quick cuts to Arlen slapping him, we will have flashbacks at different points. I won't talk about that in more depth here, though, because the trailer for the next episode is going to have extensive flashbacks to Dunk's childhood, so it makes more sense to talk about that for the episode 2 review. Point 3 of 7. The music by the new lead composer was utterly beautiful and totally fitting. That Ramin Djawadi was music composer on both Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. This is the first time we're getting a new music composer in this franchise, Dan Romer. And they said they self-consciously wanted it to be different. They would have never had Djawadi come back for this because of the major shift in focus to the world of the commoners. That they wanted entirely different music that's folk music, that they said it's the kind of things that Dunk would hear among the commoners that they have. We heard a bit of it in the trailers, and I totally got it, that this shift in focus with that. Makes complete sense, but it wasn't just good. Without exaggeration, it had true beauty in it. That if I can find the words, I'm not trying to exaggerate, it genuinely reminded me emotionally of when I was watching Lord of the Rings in a theater for the first time, 25 years ago, and the first time you hear Howard Shore's score for the whole movie, and I walked out of the theater asking, how the heck did they know the music that was playing in my head when I first read the book? Because I read the book before the movies came out. That when you see a movie that has a musical score so fitting to the book it's based on, it feels like it was always there, even though the music didn't exist yet, that it matches what you think this would sound like. That level of perfect. And I've rarely seen projects like that. Even Game of Thrones, Djawadi made a great thing, but there's so many different cultures and groups, and you're not really sure what it's supposed to sound like. He did a great job. That's kind of what, more so than him, because it's so much more focused, you can make just one soundscape for Dunk versus Game of Thrones had to have it for Daenerys in the Eastern Continent and the White Walkers and the Greyjoys and King's Landing. The range of it. But this really felt like you were at this medieval tourney among the commoners, and a lot of the music was diegetic, played by in-universe instruments. So just a level of immersion that it felt totally fitting to the world. This wasn't just, oh, it's good, it's a worthy successor, that, wow, this was great. And I loved that it turns out Djawadi actually did score one scene in this. The dancing scene with the Baratheons, he actually, when the credits rolled, it said, and special thanks, Djawadi came back to score the Baratheon folk dance scene. And it was this really nice passing of the torch moment. So that was great. Like I said, the next 3 points are things I'm going to split off into their own short videos to give them a little more focus. So these are relatively short bullet points that I'm going to expand on these and other things. This is a heads up. Look out for the full videos on these topics. So point 4 of 7 is, we knew this from the trailers, but the slight changes to the Dornish puppet show are great. That when I was at the New York Comic-Con panel where they first ran this, that was just this gasp from the crowd when, oh no, we're not having marionette puppet shows like they do in the novella. We're having these giant man-sized puppets worked by half a dozen puppeteers. And that makes complete sense that we know reading a book, they can explain this is a world without television, and they normally just have Punch and Judy hand puppets. But seeing this really complicated puppet theater with fully articulated marionette puppets, they have working mouths, and they tell full narratives, it's genuine puppet theater. They stress in the novella, this is mind-blowing even to lords, because Dorne has a more established culture of puppet theater than they do. In a book, that's one thing, and you get, they don't have television. How do you maintain that wow factor in the shift to live action for a general audience? Make it into this Lion King Broadway play style production with man-sized puppets and stilt walkers and things. That was genius. To maintain the wow factor, they need to do something different when it's in a TV show. But we'll be seeing more of that in the next episodes when they really focus on Tansel and Dunk is actually interacting with her, so I'm going to hold off on making a standalone video on that until after those, but watch out for that. Then points 5 and 6 out of 7 are that, to me, there were really only 2 significant new invented sequences in the entire episode. Not just changing a line of dialogue here, they're just the 2 things that I would consider new. First one, point 5, is the invented prostitute characters. They were great. They do serve a narrative purpose, because in the shift from page to screen, you need that exposition device of Dunk actually having dialogue with other characters, because in the novella, he's frequently alone, so much of this is from his inner thought monologue. That doesn't translate on screen. You need to invent characters for him to interact with, so he can have spoken dialogue that actually delivers exposition to the audience, that this is how they explained what a Hedge Knight is. That worked perfectly. And point 6, like I said, the second big invention was the expanded setup for Lyonel Baratheon. He was also great, and it made complete sense. He's a major recurring character. They just introduce him a bit later. I love the characterization. You can tell this is Robert's great-grandfather. All of that worked great, and it actually had character resonance with this is Dunk meeting, the member of a great house. He is really embarrassed. These are powerful people. But what I loved most about this whole sequence is that they actually worked in a dance scene. As part of my whole thing about the shift in format from page to screen, that, think about it, books can't really show visual art forms or performing arts like dancing or instrumental music. That Martin has said, I can describe that Rhaegar Targaryen could play a harp so beautifully that it brought men and women to tears. But how do I even depict that, much less, write it on my own? Or he said, this guy's a really good songwriter with lyrics, but unless you're a master lyricist, just describe someone like that. Or the book actually says of Lionel's great-grandson Renly, he's this master ballroom dancer. This is important for the culture of a court nobility, that he is really good at dancing with noblewomen, and that as a good socialite, that's really important to winning over allies, that he's charismatic that way. Robert is charismatic in this rough and tumble with the soldiers, joking around, whoring around, and drinking way, that Renly is really refined, and he acts kingly like that Renly is a really good dancer is an important skill. Just as much as, Rhaegar can play a harp very beautifully. You can't depict that in a book. So it's interesting when they work in things that the novella could never do, just due to the format shift of visual art like dancing and folk dancing and that. This is how the commoners dance, because Lionel's just doing it along with them. Was interesting, but I'm going to make a whole video about that. And last we come to point 7 of 7. While I'm seeing uniform praise from book readers for this, just total praise, I'm left baffled if this will appeal to a general audience. That Dunk's a lowly hedge knight with no armies, no lands, his belt is made of rope, his clothes are covered in mud, and he sleeps under hedges. In universe, it's the story of this lowly guy that no one wants. And I realized, just like a light shining in my head, that perfectly applies on a meta level. Who would want to watch a TV show about this lowly hedge knight with no armies, a rope for a belt, and no dragons? It matches so perfectly that Ask anyone who's actually read it from the book readers if you haven't. This is one of Martin's most beloved stories. It's arguably, on a line-for-line writing basis in terms of concision, some of his best character work ever. And he's even said, these are some of my favorite characters. I was unsure of that, so that's why I didn't rush out a same night review on premiere night, that I spent the past few days just standing back and surveying the reaction from other YouTube channels. Well, starting with the book fan channels, or people who are familiar with Game of Thrones know who Dunk and Egg are. Uniform praise from everyone, but also uniform, every single one at the end of their reviews openly expressed their wonder. Would general audiences even watch this? Well, I've also been checking out general TV review channels on YouTube, the live reactor channels, the big ones with 250,000 subscribers, 50,000 subscribers, mainstream live reactor channels. And many of them were actually intrigued at how different it was. A lighter tone show focusing on this sympathetic working class guy. I mean, all of them expressed we're surprised at how different it is, but their one word, if you could summarize their reaction as one word that I've consistently seen from everyone, that word is intrigued. That they are genuinely interested in watching the rest of the season, so that's encouraging. But even then, there is a divide between large-scale YouTube live reactor channels and the broader global TV audience of literally millions of people. Because even the YouTube reactor channels, those skew towards people who are actually willing to watch a full TV season to its conclusion, that have the patience to give it time for a slow burn, if that's what that format is for that show. That even what we would consider a casual, general live reaction YouTube channel is a bit more patient than the general audience, who will not keep watching, who will stop watching mid-season. Even for shows I didn't like, that never occurred to me. It's just not how I watch shows. Even when I'm angry at a show, I'll give up on it after a season ends. That is, I've almost never stopped watching something mid-season after an episode or two, trying it out and not liking it. So that remains to be seen. Will a lot of the general audience, who are not online at all, watch one episode then quit? The live reactor channels, at least, were very intrigued. Well, my hope is that the brevity of this show works in its favor, that it's only 6 episodes. And given that the big twists about the plot happen in episode 3, we're pretty sure episode 3 reveals the real stakes of the story. So my prediction is, if you're not hooked in by episode 3, you won't be. But it's such a short thing that I don't think people are going to get bored with it enough that they turn it off. That in this case, its shorter scale, shorter runtime will work in its favor. We shall see. So please remember to like and subscribe. I'm going to be making other videos after this, topical ones tying into it. Obviously the episode 2 review at this point. And will this rise up to be the next big hit for this?